Hello everyone, today I want to talk to you about how German media are saying that German companies are now comprehensively learning from China's speed. In addition, American experts say that in the current anti-China political climate, Trump is completely an outlier. The United States now wants to pursue major power cooperation with China rather than major power competition. Within the boards of German companies, the term China's speed is now spreading everywhere. Germany's Süddeutsche Zeitung recently published an article saying that German management is learning China's speed from the Chinese. For German managers, this is the solution: to become faster like the Chinese and thus become better and more profitable. It sounds pretty good, but it's not an easy thing to do. In their search for inspiration and success, German managers are more than willing to look toward Asia. 40 years ago, they looked curiously to Japan, wondering why Japanese companies, especially those in the automotive industry, had suddenly become so successful. At that time, the answer was a Japanese word: continuous improvement. This is a management principle that relies on many small steps of improvement, meaning constant progress from everyone and in everything. It is highly integrated with employee participation, traditional Japanese values, humanistic philosophy, and a great deal of corporate management. However, the term continuous improvement and its association with Japan have become things of the past. In recent times, German managers have begun to closely observe China. What they see is no longer related to the Japanese way of life, but rather it is more about the speed of China. Things have to be done quickly, so there isn't much time for lengthy and profound discussions. Although the term China speed has been circulating in German boardrooms for several months, it has only started to trend online in the past few weeks. China speed has become the buzzword of this summer, and I believe it is currently the most widely adopted management standard. From Beijing, traversing through Wolfsburg in northwest Germany to Ingolstadt, it historically used to take a considerable period of 5 or even 6 full years to develop and launch a new automobile in Germany. For Chinese people, precision is considered more important than speed, but now this is no longer the way things move forward. That's because car companies believe that everything should proceed at a faster pace, just like China speed. Volkswagen's entry-level electric vehicle, the ID.1, is planned to be launched in 2027. From project initiation to mass production, it may take only 3 years, much faster than the previous 5 or 6 years. This brand new electric car, aimed at the mass market, is designed to compete with Chinese cars with a price of only 20,000 euros. The idea is that if Chinese car manufacturers can produce much faster and at lower cost than European manufacturers, then to succeed, everyone must become more Chinese. According to the Süddeutsche Zeitung, the world turns. In the past, Chinese people in car factories in Hefei, Changchun, or Shenyang learned how to build cars from Germans. Now, Germans hope to learn from the Chinese how to build cars faster. This new pace in China has also fascinated German politicians. The Minister of Economic Affairs of Rhineland-Palatinate, Schmidt, recently said that some words linger in your mind not because they are beautiful, but because they evoke a certain feeling. Just a few days ago, Schmidt visited China, and after his trip, he published a commentary in Germany's Handelsblatt, saying that what impressed him most during his time in China was the speed of China. A lot is happening in China that we simply cannot imagine. You can start a company just by using a mobile app. The approval process can be completed in just a few days. One-stop services are provided for citizens, businesses, and administrative departments, and even achieving an energy transition only takes a short amount of time. Here in China, efficiency is a real thing. Last Monday, Schmidt met a young German engineer who was working at a Chinese research and development center. This young German said that he chose to work here because the speed in China and the freedom to implement projects are truly inspiring to him. In conclusion, the German politician Schmidt called for Germany to also develop rapid plans and for the German government to make swift decisions. According to the Süddeutsche Zeitung, in China, major projects like hospitals, airports, or high-speed rail lines do not experience the kind of prolonged delays seen with Germany's Berlin-Schönefeld airport project because decision-making and implementation in China emphasize speed. Of course, the speed in China would not be possible without the full support of the Chinese people and the hard work of companies and employees. So let me first give a brief summary. 40 years ago, when I was in college, the whole world was learning from Japan. The book Japan is Number One was extremely popular at the time, and it was all about Japanese management methods. The reason was simple: Japan's economy was on its way to becoming number one in the world. However, in 1985, Japan was forced by the United States to sign the Plaza Accord, and its development came to a sudden halt. 40 years later, even the industrial powerhouse Germany has started to learn from China. The reason is just as simple: China's economy is also on its way to becoming number one in the world. However, China is different from Japan. China will not be forced by the United States to sign a humiliating treaty that stifles its own development. I also want to talk about some new warnings from Trump regarding China. On August 25th, in the Oval Office of the White House while meeting with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung, Trump said that China must supply rare earth magnets to the United States, and if they don't, we will impose a 200% tariff on them. Trump reiterated that although he acknowledges Beijing has some tricks up its sleeve, the United States also has some truly incredible strategies. However, he doesn't want to play this card against China, because if he did, he would destroy China. In fact, recently, China hasn't necessarily stopped supplying rare earth magnets to the United States, so it's unclear why Trump would say this. But then Trump changed his tone, saying that he plans to attend the APEC Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit held in South Korea around the end of October. He also said that he is very likely to visit China either this year or in the near future. He stated that the United States has a good relationship with China. In fact, if Trump had the ability to impose a 200% tariff on China, he would have done it long ago. The United States cannot afford to cut off trade relations with China or for China to stop supplying rare earths, which is why both sides reached a trade agreement. So when it comes to statements about imposing a 200% tariff on China, no one really believes Trump is serious. As a result, the US stock market didn't react at all. Zhao Suisheng, a professor at the Joseph Korbel School of International Studies at the University of Denver, recently gave a speech during his visit to mainland China, saying that many of the extreme hawks in the United States who had originally bet on Trump continuing his tough China policy from his first term are now deeply disappointed. Because the ideological orientation of the Trump 2.0 administration has completely shifted inward, his main enemies have become the Democrats, as well as immigrants, the LGBTQ community, and European human rights advocates, rather than China or Russia. Zhao Suisheng said that regarding US-China relations during Trump's first term, he has summarized 3 different viewpoints. One viewpoint emphasizes the role of leaders. Harvard University's Allison bet in the very first month of Trump's first term that by the following January there would be a dramatic improvement in US-China relations. The reason is simple. Both leaders of China and the US are strongmen who respect each other, so the relationship between the two countries would be quite stable. By August, when the Trump administration cancelled the isolation plan modeled after Nazi Germany, Allison wrote another article believing that his viewpoint had already been confirmed. Before the end of that year, Trump would meet with the Chinese leader, and once they met, Allison believed Trump would become America's second Nixon, very tough on China during his first term, but in the second term, he would establish what he considered a partnership with China against a backdrop of toughness. The second viewpoint comes from Ian Bremmer, the founder and president of the Eurasia Group, who disagrees with Allison's perspective. Bremmer's analysis is based on so-called structural realism, which holds that the structural contradictions between the two major powers, China and the United States, are irreconcilable. No matter who the leaders are, even if Trump were friendlier to China and the Chinese leader were willing to improve relations with him, these structural contradictions cannot be overcome. He said that by this time next year, things would be even worse. Zhao Suisheng said that now, after more than half a year has passed, he feels that US-China relations are not as bad as Bremmer described, nor as good as Allison suggested, which leads to a third viewpoint. On July 31st of this year, when US Secretary of State Rubio was interviewed by Fox News, he described the current US-China relationship as having stabilized strategically. He said that US-China relations have reached a stalemate where neither side can defeat the other, and both have retreated to consider what to do next. He feels that perhaps Rubio does not agree with these views, but since Trump is his boss and believes that both the US and China can improve relations, Rubio has no choice but to go along with it. Against this backdrop, Trump's strategic thinking is closer to great power cooperation rather than great power competition. Trump's idea of cooperation is that the world can be divided into spheres of influence. The US controls the Western Hemisphere. Trump wants to turn Canada into the 51st state of the United States and considers Mexico, the Panama Canal, and Greenland as belonging to the US. This is classic Monroe Doctrine. As for the Asia-Pacific region, whatever China does, the US won't interfere, and the Eurasian continent is left to Russia. Trump believes that the leaders of several major powers can cooperate rather than compete. He has cut funding to institutions that used to promote democracy, such as the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID, essentially shutting them down. Zhao Suisheng concluded that Trump's 1.0 new Cold War strategy against China was wrong and unsustainable, while his 2.0 policy is a good sign. Shifting from ideological conflicts in geopolitics to pragmatic trade negotiations and seeking compromise, the goal is to bring China-US relations into what Rubio calls a period of strategic stability, where both sides are locked in a stalemate. Whether this stability can be sustained depends on factors such as the personal styles of the leaders, the success or failure of negotiations, and the practicality of major power cooperation. Personally, I think this analysis of major power cooperation is quite close to Trump's current approach. In his mind, it's all about the three giants, China, the US, and Russia, calling the shots. As for whether this disappoints the American hawks, Trump himself doesn't seem very interested.